A new survey finds a massive reduction in the number of college students who identify as non-binary, and a separate study has found that those identifying as transgender have been cut in half. There's a lot to unpack here. Raj, Nair, what do you make of these surveys?
Well, this is absolutely fascinating stuff. So let's go right to the numbers so there's no mystery about what's actually being said. So one of the main finds is from a paper called The Decline of Trans and Queer Identity Among Young Americans by Professor Eric Kaufman at the University of Buckingham in the UK. So very official stuff. Now, here's just a few bullet points from the executive summary of that find. Here it is. After surging in the 2010s and 20s, trans and queer identities are in decline among young Americans. Here's another one. The transgender share among university students peaked in 2023 and has almost halved since, from nearly 7% to under 4%. That's astounding. I mean, we're talking 2 years here, Billy. A couple more. The share of students identifying as not heterosexual fell by around 10 points in that same period. And here's one more. Today's freshmen are less BTQ plus than seniors, suggesting that decline will continue. These are astounding statistics. I mean, this happened fast. And I think what's really interesting is there's this quote or this line calling it the Great Awakening. And apparently the Great Awakening has ended. This social contagion of this gender dysphoria, I mean, by the statistics, is over. I mean, you look at Target, they've changed their stance. You've looked at a lot of companies, Bud Light, down the list of companies that are really changing their tone, because it does seem objectively like what happened where people were giving, hormone blockers to prepubescent kids, which is just, I have opinions, but I'll keep them to myself, I guess. That trend seems to have been more social, more a sign of the quick times than an actual, scientific increase in said gender dysphoria. So in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, I think this is a step in the right direction. I think that obviously God created mankind male and female in his image. He created them. That's the very beginning of scripture. And obviously, as a believer in Yeshua, I stick to biblical principles. And so the fact that this trend is a trend says a lot, Billy.
No, it does. And it's not just the transgender part of this, which obviously the non-binary, the people who say, well, I'm not a boy or a girl, that's part of this. But even those numbers went from 3.6% of young adults identifying as a gender other than male or female, meaning they believe they're non-binary. That is currently at 3.6%. In 2023, it was at 6.8%. So this is falling across the board. And I think, Satan is the author of confusion. Whenever you see massive confusion, you have to wonder, where is that coming from? When you clarify confusion, and even if you're not a Christian and you don't subscribe to Satan being the author of confusion, it's just common sense. When you're pushing confusion on people, it's going to metastasize. People are going to embrace it. They're going to be more confused. When you actually give clarity, and we're seeing that in the law right now, we're seeing there's currently an administration that has had less tolerance for biological men competing in women's sports. And for a lot of these issues, that clarity seems to be trickling down to everyone. I think you also have a lot of fed up parents who are tired of watching their kids be taught certain things in public schools, right? So it's not coincidental to me that there's been a change and shift in tone on these issues at a cultural, at a political level, and that we're now actually seeing people respond to that in how they identify with more clarity. So, again, you don't want confusion, get rid of the confusion and be clear.